highlighting history of suburban Sydney with the St Peter's Cooks River History Group.
Our aim is to preserve and promote local history.
We are based at St Peter's in Sydney's inner west.
In 1789, Governor Phillip made Neutral Harbour a place of anchor for all non-British ships visiting Port Jackson. It was far enough away from Sydney Cove to discourage convicts from attempting to escape on foreign ships, and a safe distance from the settlement.
Captain John Piper gave 700 acres of his land as a wedding gift to Alfred Thrupp, his son-in-law, in 1816. Thrupp built a cottage near the waterfront.
The Surprise, the first steam vessel to be built in Australia, was constructed in 1831 at Millard's Boatyard, Neutral Bay.
Craig Nathan was built in 1831 on the waterfront near Thrupp's cottage. Ben Boyd occupied the house in the 1840s and erected a stone dam for wool washing and supplying water for ships.
Ben Boyd Road was named after this Scottish merchant who sailed from England to Australia in his yacht Wanderer. 2 plaques on a rock face commemorate Boyd and his ship.
Craig Nathan's land was subdivided and the Hastings, also known as Salisbury and Milton House, was erected on the Hay Street frontage in 1904. Both buildings were leased as boarding houses. In 1956, Hastings was acquired by the Commonwealth of Australia and used as an RAAF support unit. The property was sold, now multiple residences.
Carrabba Point was originally called Ballast Point. In the early days of the colony, the area was quarried to provide stone ballast for ships returning to England, as well as stone for building works. In the 1850s, 8,000 tonnes of sandstone were quarried for the construction of Fort Denison.
Patrick Hayes, businessman and owner of the Oak Steam Brick Works, established a soap and oil factory at Carrabba Point.
The Port Jackson and Manly Steamship Company purchased Hayes' factory in 1883 and established a large depot and engineering works. After the workshops closed, the state government purchased the site. In 1974 it was cleared and Carrabba Reserve created.
In 1876 a small gasworks was established by former AGL employees James Fell and Charles Watt. 2 years later the North Shore Gas Company took control of the plant and expanded it. The gasworks ceased operating in 1932. 10 years later the government took possession of the gasworks, demolished buildings and constructed a torpedo factory. Following World War II, the torpedo workshops continued. The sheds on the waterfront were converted to submarine workshops, known as Sub-Base Platypus, which closed in 1999. Today the site is a mixed-use waterfront hub with workspaces, a community playground and barbecues.
In 1873, the North Shore Ferry Company commenced operating a steam yacht from Circular Quay to Mossman's Bay, which called it Neutral Bay. Sydney Ferries erected the present entrance to the Hay Street Ferry Wharf in 1909.
The Oaks Hotel, established in 1880, was named after the Oaks Steam Brick Works located on adjoining land. The present hotel building was erected in 1938. The hotel is famous for the large oak tree planted in the courtyard in 1938 by Kathleen Gill, whose family ran the hotel between 1918 and 1975.
The Oak Steam Brick Company operated from 1880 to 1891. The site was taken over by the government. Neutral Bay Tram Depot was established when the tramways were electrified in 1909. During the mid-1950s, when buses replaced trams, the northern portion of the depot was retained as a bus depot. The southern portion of the former tram sheds was converted into the Big Bear supermarket. The site became the Big Bear Shopping Centre in 1988, refurbished and renamed the Big Bear Restaurant Village in 1989, then Coles Supermarket Complex in 1994.
Neutral Bay Public School was established in 1886. A large brick building was built in 1897.
A tram service which commenced in 1890 continued until 1956. The tram terminus was beside the ferry wharf.
Regular ferry and tram services encouraged residential subdivision.
The Wesley Tennis Club held their first general meeting in 1899. The clubhouse burnt down in 1921 and Kelvin, formerly a private school, was purchased for use as a clubhouse, today known as the Neutral Bay Club.
The present St Augustine's Anglican Church opened in 1924. It replaced an 1887 wooden building. The church features World War I memorial stained glass windows.
St Ronan's was built in 1889. The Sisters of St Joseph purchased the house in 1945 and renamed it Nazareth.
The townhouse development at 189 Ben Boyd Road was the site of Watersley Hall. Established in 1889, it was the Watersley skating rink, then the Neutral Bay School of Arts. During World War I, headquarters for the St George English Rifle Regiment, a cadet drill and infantry hall. It resumed its role as a public hall until the building was converted to the Southern Cross Garage in 1926, later renamed Ben Boyd Garage. The garage continued to operate until the 1980s.
St John's Presbyterian Church dates from 1890. The church features a pipe organ installed in 1912.
Neutral Bay Post Office was established in 1889 in Hume's chemist shop on Ben Boyd Road. It moved to Hayes Street in 1926, now a private residence.
Anderson Park was created following reclamation of land during the 1890s and was dedicated in 1898. Originally known as Warringah Park, it was renamed in 1926 to honour William Anderson, a long-serving council alderman and mayor. Sir Charles Kingsford Smith took off from the park for his trans-Pacific flight with P.J. Taylor in 1934.
By the turn of the 20th century, Neutral Bay was a suburb featuring attractive homes of the well-to-do. In the 1925 Residential Guide of Sydney and Suburbs, it was described as a delightful watering suburb on the northern foreshores of Sydney Harbour, surrounded by undulating grassy lawns and gardens, and connected with the city by an excellent ferry service from Circular Quay.
Neutral Bay and Careening Cove had a number of boat builders. The Joyce Brothers boat shed was enlarged by subsequent owners, including Halversons, the RAAF and the Australian Customs Department.
Neutral Bay Fire Station was established in 1909.
Walleringah Mansions opened in 1910 as a private hotel. After World War II it was used for affordable boarding. The complex has been restored and reopened as gated community residence.
The concrete retaining wall and steps near number 8 Ben Boyd Road are typical of works carried out in the North Sydney municipality during the 1930s, when governments funded unemployment relief schemes.
The buildings at the junction of Military and Wickham Roads are typical of 1920s strip shopping development.
Between World War I and II, flats were built within a short walking distance of the ferry wharf.
Nutcote was the home and studio of May Gibbs, famous for writing and illustrating children's books. Gibbs and her husband moved into the house in 1925. North Sydney Municipal Council purchased the property in 1990. It was leased to the Nutcote Trust, who set up a house museum.
By the 1930s, Neutral Bay had become a largely middle-class suburb with private homes and small apartment buildings. The shopping centre developed in the vicinity of Neutral Bay Junction. Numerous boarding houses, guest houses and private hotels flourished close to ferry services.
Today, the suburb's proximity to the central business district Good public transport and local services make Neutral Bay a desirable place to live and where the architecture is of note.
Clee Court on Lower Wickham Road, a group of 5 dwellings arranged around a central courtyard, was built about 1934 on the site of Clee Villa, one of the first homes in Neutral Bay.
In Spruson Street, a group of Victorian Gothic villas erected in the 1880s and interwar flats.
Harriet Street buildings include a Victorian sandstone villa, 3-storey semi-detached houses and Federation houses built in the early 1900s.
Lansdowne Private Hotel, Guest House and Boarding Accommodation was taken over by Cranbrook Care in 2007. It is one of 3 arts and crafts buildings on Mans Avenue.
2 villas on Wickham Road.
On Shell Cove Road, examples of 20th century arts and crafts architecture. If you have enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel. It's free. Coming soon, Penrith on the Nepean River, a Sydney outer western suburb, one of 4 cities within the Greater Sydney metropolitan area. And check out our website, stpeterscooksriverhistory.wordpress.com.